quorum. I'd like to call to order the Highland Park Board of Education virtual public workshop meeting of Monday, August 2nd, 2021. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the Highland Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting, setting forth the time, date, and location to be submitted for publication to the Home News. Excuse me. Okay. Home News, Tribune, and Star Ledger, and posted on the board's website at least 48 hours in advance of this meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board will be given the opportunity to do so before the meeting adjourns for the evening. Linda, could we have a roll call, please? You're muted, Linda.
Thank you.
You're
Sorry
welcome.
about that. Ms. Simaresti, Ms. Coleman, Ms. Gowan,
Here.
Mr. Krieger,
Here.
Mr. Magaziner,
Here.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola. Do you expect that she'll be coming?
She said she was.
Okay. Ms. Prus,
Here.
Mr. Roslevich,
Here.
Mr. Woodward.
Here.
And now could we have the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we had two communications to the board. On July 13th, Jen Voorhees wrote about a question about the future of middle school math. And on July 27th, Rob Scott wrote about the district COVID safety policies in the fall. There are no minutes to be approved. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Nicosia for the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Krieger. Tonight, I wanted to present on the survey results from the Highland Park School District Safe Reopening survey that went out in June. So as part of the third round of grant funding and for a safe opening, we're required to put out a survey to collect information regarding people's feelings on our safe opening in areas that are of high priority. So I'm going to share my screen and present the results of that survey. Second to adjust my screen here. Okay. So the safe reopening survey results. The survey was sent to staff, students, and the community in English, Spanish, and Chinese. We had 340 responses, which I recognize is low considering it went out to such a large group of people, but in general, our response rate to surveys isn't extraordinarily high. But of the 340 responses, 71% of the respondents were parents, 28% of the respondents were staff, and 1% of the respondents were community members. Of the parent responses, 48 of those, or 14%, were parents of students at Irving. 121 responses that made up 35.6% of the results were parents of students at Bartle. 98 responses, or 28.8% of the survey responses of parents, were from middle school, and 111 responses, making up 32.6% of the survey, were from high school parents. So we asked a series of questions regarding ranking from priority, highest priority, to lowest priority of requirements for a healthy school environment. So the first one was universal and correct wearing of masks. So as you can see, 125 responses ranked this as a first priority. So as you can see, it's a pretty high priority item that the school district require universal and correct wearing of masks for the fall. The second question was on physical distancing of students. So you can see relatively about the same. It wasn't anything that stood out in terms of a high priority or low priority. About 48 response said it was a first priority. 39%, 39 responses, said it was an 8th priority. We asked about hand washing and respiratory etiquette. And again, as you can see, a pretty high response rate as a high priority or first priority item at 127 of the responses. For cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities, including improving ventilation, I was happy to see that 187 responses ranked ventilation and clean facilities as a high priority item as well. For contact tracing in combination with isolation and quarantine, not as high priority as maybe some of the other ones like masks and ventilation, but still relatively high in general when you look at the total numbers, maybe first to third priority for that. Diagnostic and screening testing, again, not as high as some of the other priorities, but looking at the total numbers, maybe ranked in the second or third highest category there. Another high priority item was efforts to provide vaccinations to staff and students who are eligible. So a very high priority item from the respondents at 133 responses for first priority. The appropriate accommodations for children with disabilities with respect to health and safety policies, again, a very high priority with 118 responses saying that this was a first priority item. Then we asked in the survey if you felt that your child or children or the students in general have experienced learning loss due to the pandemic. So you can see that approximately 65.3% of the respondents agreed with that they felt that children or students experienced learning loss. 18.2% or 62 out of the 340 respondents said they disagreed with that. And 16.8% or 57 out of 340 respondents said that they were not sure if students or children experienced a learning loss as a direct result of the pandemic. We asked a series of rankings or which preference in terms of, to address learning loss, how did respondents feel about the following measures, which ones would benefit the students of Highland Park. So you can see highlighted in bold were the two highest ranking or most responses. So in terms of addressing learning loss, people felt that there should be small group tutoring during the year and provide programs during the school day to provide academic assistance. And coming in, I guess, a second ranking would be summer learning activities, which we're already doing, and ensuring there are extracurricular opportunities for students after school. So those were high priority items that people felt were ways to address learning loss. So we asked about mental health challenges. And so you can see that 58.5% of the respondents agree that they felt that their child or children or the students have faced mental health challenges during the pandemic. 24.1% disagreed with that, and 17.4% put that they were not sure if the students have faced mental health challenges as a result of the pandemic. And then to address the mental health challenges, we asked the survey respondents to rank or decide which of the following they felt that would be important measures that would benefit the students of Highland Park in response to the mental health challenges. And again, in bold, you can see that 66.4% or 225 out of the 340 respondents wanted increased school-based counseling. and 51% or 173 out of the 340 respondents said professional development for educators on emotionally responsive practices. And then, coming in, I guess the next would be at 43.7%, parent or community programs to assist with anxiety, depression, and other areas of mental health. So then we asked the survey, people to take the survey to indicate their level of concern for this coming spring in the following areas. So you can see that the orange would be areas that they are extremely concerned. Red is concerned and blue is not concerned. So you can see that areas like getting caught up academically was an area of concern, not as much extremely concerned, but definitely concerned. The health of staff and students was definitely an area of extreme concern and concern. The mental health of staff and students was an area of extreme concern and of concern. And concerns about adapting socially with peers was generally a concern, but not necessarily extremely concerned. And then lastly, I asked an open-ended question to provide additional input. And so I looked through all the response, and as predicted, there was a lot of people that responded back for a need for good ventilation. So they wanted to ensure that there was good ventilation for staff and students going back to the schools in the fall. There were mixed suggestions in terms of vaccination protocols. Some people responded wanting to mandate vaccination for students and staff, and others that didn't. There was a large concern for flexible learning options and scheduling. So there were some people that responded openly to talk about the benefits of virtual learning experiences, or maybe more flexible options for students, maybe some more flexible schedules for students. Overall, in general, there was a need to make sure students, staff, and families felt comfortable and safe coming back into the buildings in the fall. There was a very strong need for social emotional learning, SEL, and mental health. And masks had some mixed suggestions. People commented on the requirement for masks, and there were plenty of comments for the opposite, to not require masks. And so what does all this information do, and what are our next steps? So we need to finalize our plans for full-time and in-person instruction. If you are not already aware, the New Jersey Department of Education and Governor put out that all students are going to be back in full person instruction in the fall. There's no virtual learning opportunities or options for that. So our requirement is to get all students and staff safely and securely back into schools in the fall. So then this information, the leadership team has already met last week, reviewed this information, and has used it to put together a general outline on a safe opening for all students. That rough draft was shared with a central leadership team this afternoon that poked some holes in it, picked it apart, asked some questions. We clarified some things, added to it. Still a couple of areas that are in need, but the survey responses were used to inform those decisions. In addition, the information is used to decide how we're going to use the ESSER III funding that we will get come early fall. So this information will be used to inform the decisions that we make for that next round of money as well. So this survey, along with the Road Forward Plan from the Department of Education, the CDC guidelines, will be used to inform the safe opening plan, the specific guidelines, which will be forthcoming. So expect an email from me with that information, mid to end of August. In addition, I'll provide more updated information about all of this at the August 23rd board meeting. And I do recognize that the information is changing almost daily. So if you're following things like a hawk, like I'm sure I know I am, and members of the Board of Education are as well, things are changing rapidly in light of the Delta variant that is going around. So I know that there is, the governor is being pressed to make some decisions as well. So that's why we're not really ready to roll out our plan just yet. We feel that there may be some more information forthcoming from the Department of Education and the governor that will help us inform our decision making. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'll field any questions from the board members.
Oh, Linda, I just wanted to alert you that Michelle is in the meeting now, and she has been since
Yes.
about 6:40.
Yes, I did catch that.
Great.
I appreciate if you let me know if or when Monique comes to.
I will.
Thank you.
I'll be looking. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Rob, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. That was fascinating. A lot of good information, and I'm sure more to come. And recognizing that, as you say, things are changing by the day. Are there things that parents can be or should be doing now in preparation for what is now, like, just 1 month away? Seems far, but it's very near for all of us and for all the families with the kids, with especially small kids. So I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions or thoughts.
Yeah, so two things come to my mind right away. The first is I sent out a letter really encouraging students and adults that are 12 years of age and older to get vaccinated. And I strongly encourage members of our community to do so. That would really, really help with a safe opening of school districts. For example, the CDC does have guidelines regarding if students are vaccinated and staff are vaccinated, they don't have to quarantine if they're exposed to someone who tested positive and they're without symptoms. So things like that will prevent disruption in our educational process. So getting vaccinated will definitely help. In addition, I will put out in August, at the August 23rd board meeting, updates about what the students are doing, the principals are doing to reorient students back into schools for all students. So I would encourage parents to start having those conversations with their children, or guardians to have with their children about coming back to school. We're all coming back, so it's important that we start to have those conversations on what that means. What feelings do you have about that? And start having those conversations and encourage people to take advantage of the opportunities that we have for reorienting back into the school community. Marilyn?
Yeah, just any more specifics on that, the orientation idea for the different levels, like what, again, August 23rd is going to be like 10 days before school starts, maybe a little more. Any hints as what they're going to be doing at the different levels to get students comfortable coming in?
Sure. So the kindergarten does a kindergarten meet and greet. It's really more for the parents, but for them to come in and meet the teachers and talk about supplies and things like that. So they have a kindergarten orientation. Irving is also putting out opportunities they have videos that they're going to push out and opportunities for walkthroughs with the guidance counselor, Ms. Gonzalez. At Bartle, 2nd and 3rd grade, we'll have specific orientations into the buildings for students that haven't been there. The date, I think, is, I don't know the specific date, but it's later in August. I don't want to get it wrong. And then shortly after that orientation, Ms. Knapp is having popcorn with the principal. So she'll couple that together to reorient and acclimate everyone back into Bartle. For 4th and 5th grade students, it's going to be via guidance, so they can make appointments with guidance to have individual tours or walkthroughs of the building. And that's actually going to be a trend that you'll see at middle and high school as well. And that's going to be really important because we felt that we want to identify students that are nervous about coming in or have some reservations to meet specifically with guidance so that we can identify those students that may have some anxieties coming back to school. We can reorient them. And then we can also put them on our radar to make sure we're following up and to get them back in and ease their anxieties as much as possible. So that same thing applies with middle and high school for our upper grades. So 7th and 8th grade or 8th grade students can meet with guidance counselors for the same, and same thing with our upperclassmen at the high school. For 6th grade, I know Miss Brady is going to do an orientation at the end of August with walkthroughs with the incoming 6th graders. They'll also pick up their Chromebooks since they'll be getting the Chromebooks from the outgoing 12th graders as part of our recirculation of the devices. So we're going to couple all that together. In addition, she's planning on a 6th grade social event after their orientation. So they'll have time to socialize with each other and plan some fun activities, some team building with our 6th graders. She'll have an orientation for the 7th graders, and then anybody that needs individual tours at 7th grade that were in the building or 8th grade students can come in through guidance. And then Mr. Lassiter is doing a more extensive 9th and 10th grade orientation that we approved the staff members at the last board meeting to run that as well. And that's at the end of August. I believe one of them is August, it's like the August 25th, 28th. There's a couple of dates within there. I don't want to get them wrong specifically for the building, but they're all planned for that last week in August.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't see any other further questions. Mark, I'll spin it back to you.
Christina, thank you.
Welcome.
So we'll go on to the committee reports and items for review. This is a workshop meeting, so we will not be voting this evening. Once we go through the list, I do have one item that I will want to move for voting this evening. It's a finance item so that we can do the work after approving it, not retroactively, but I'll get to that when I give the finance report. And then after that, we'll go into public comment and first public comment. And then not much after that. So Michelle, I see you're here. Can you take over the curriculum and instruction report, please?
Yes, of course. I am going to leave my camera off, if that's okay.
Sure.
We had a busy week last week, and unfortunately, Monique and Rob were not able to attend our meeting, so it was just me and Dr. Nicosia. So we met on July 27th. We discussed an item that I had actually talked about when I first ran for the board so many years ago. And that was a concept that was a part of the Highland Park schools probably decades ago now. It was called Saturday School. And the idea was that you would have, lots of different experts in town, people that had skills or hobbies that they were able to spend a day during the weekend, a couple hours perhaps, teaching that thing. One of the examples was photography. So we discussed that, Christina and I, and we did a kind of a brainstorming session with ideas like that, because we were talking about creating, some content, I guess you could say, to enhance the academics that we cover in school for the purpose of motivating kids to look outside of, their typical subjects. And really to enhance the motivation that they might have for school subjects. So Christina and I were kind of volleying back and forth ideas, and we talked for quite a while. We didn't, make any decisions or plans necessarily, but we did talk about how perhaps this idea of a weekend class for students would, materialize, and if that would be counted for school credit, and really just kind of formulating an idea, a creative idea to come up with ways to plug all the gaps that we had during the pandemic, and also a way to maybe create a new path to credit recovery for some students who weren't able to do the SHIP program or the traditional credit recovery. And on that leg of the conversation, Dr. Nicosia shared with me that Mr. Richardson, Jason Richardson, the vice principal at the high school, is kind of taking this idea, and had already taken this idea, and began to run with it and create a concept and a plan with which to do that in terms of credit recovery for the high school. So we also discussed that idea of credit recovery concerning students who were entering their senior years this coming year, so academic year 21-22. Unfortunately, those kids won't have very long to make up the missing work from this past year. They'll only have till the end of the first semester to make up work and to earn credit for those classes in which they were given incompletes or passes previously. But that aside, that's one group of students. That aside, other students in other grade levels will be given until the fall semester of their senior years to recover those incompletes and passes and translate those into actual grades. So I think that, some kids only have a short period of time with which to work, but others have more. And that was the good news that we were able to, bring to the community. We also talked about the guidance office, how they will be in constant contact with those students who had incompletes and passes, and how Dr. Nicosia will have pretty much like set up notification times for communications with the guidance office to make sure that everything is clicking away and that there is constant contact with those students in order to get their credit recovered. And I know previous to tonight's meeting, there was a leadership team meeting in which the guidance office staff members were going to sit down with the rest of the leadership team and the administration to talk about messaging to students and to make that message as supportive as possible, to make sure that we're cheerleading these students, because this is a pretty big task. Making up all of this work seems gargantuan, and any way that we could make this into a situation where they can just take baby steps and feel good and keep on going rather than giving up, that's something that we support for sure. So that is the end of my report. There's not much else to say as far as the agenda. I think it's just the regular items as usual. And that's it. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take a whack at it.
Anne, go ahead.
I'm delighted to hear. Can you guys hear me? I have a new setup.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, how unusual.
Hey.
Sound good.
Thank you. I just wanted to say how delighted I was to hear that some students will have more time to finish up. I appreciate that, Michelle and Dr. Nicosia.
Sure. I mean, I don't want to say that there was anything from curriculum that, we did not take credit for that at all. That is all Dr. Nicosia and her team. But I think that it is a far more compassionate view than was had before, So good job.
Any more questions? Okay, seeing none, Michelle, thank you very much. That was great.
Thank you. Sure.
So we moved the order of the committees around so that in alphabetical order, so that we next will talk about equity and excellence. And even though there's no items to be moved, and Monique is not here, but did you have a meeting in the last few weeks, Christina?
No, we are going to meet, the committee is going to meet next week on Thursday, August 12th.
Fabulous. Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll move on to finance, which is committee I chair. It's not a huge number of items. We did not meet. We will likely meet before the next board meeting on end of August. We have the usual bill lists. Number 2, number 3 are travel and related expense reimbursement reports. Number 4 are 3 different contractors. One of them is the organization doing our CPR and first aid certification course. That's Talent Stock LLC. The second is Educational Services Commission of New Jersey, which does a lot of different evaluations for us and other services, particularly involved with special education needs and physical therapy and so on. So that's their bill list. And then the third item, which was attached to the schedule attached to our agenda, is SD Game LLC, which provides athletic training services. So those are the trainers at the game. Item 5 is a long list of out-of-district special education placements. I believe I counted 29 items. That is not an unusual number. And although prices have been climbing, these prices are not unusual any longer. The good news around this is that this year, at least, the state funded much more of this in our state aid than they have in the past. We'll see if they do that in the future. Item 6 is reimbursement of non-public school transportation costs. When parents send their children to a private school, if the school is more than 2 miles and less than 20 miles from Highland Park, we have to pay a flat rate transportation cost to the family per child, and the state reimburses us for most of it. And that's this number, $68,440. We do have a lot of children going to non-public schools. And then item 7 is to put that money into into the reserved fund balance. Did I get that right, Linda? Into the reserved or unreserved?
No, what happens is, because this is for last year and we haven't had a chance to use that money, the state allows a waiver so that we can bring it into this year's budget so that we can use it for this year's transportation costs.
Fabulous. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And then the last item, after we go through all of these, I'm going to want to go back to this after public comment and move this item. This is a contract with J&R Sound and Communication for the sound system for the press box in the athletic field. And if we don't approve it tonight, we'll have to approve it retroactively. So I'd like to recommend, unless there are board objections, that we move this tonight so the work can go forward without us doing this retroactively. And that is it for the finance. Any questions from the board? Okay. Seeing none, let's move across to personnel and communications. Anne, I'll turn it over to you.
So I missed the meeting. Chris or Marilyn, would one of you feel moved to read the minutes?
Yeah, so we met.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, last week and discussed some confidential things, personnel matters, and then the agenda items. There are a number of resignations, some of whom have been here for a long time, so we're sad to see them go. Number 2 is Donna Miola from the business office. Number 3, Ms. Fermin Taveras, a Spanish teacher. Number 4, Ms. Chambers, the choir teacher, I understand is moving to a different city. Number 5, Emily Auendorf, a paraprofessional at the middle school. One thing we did discuss, not at the last meeting, but several meetings ago, was just the number of teachers, pool of teachers is shrinking in New Jersey. There was a report about this from the Rutgers GSE a couple months ago. So it's becoming increasingly difficult to find replacements for teachers, especially with specializations. And so far, I think we've been doing well, but I hope we can replace them without too much problem. So then we had a number of changes in position. For example, number 8, Ms. Landis is going to join the special education program based on a a passion for the field that she's had for a long time. So we're very happy about that. And then there's a approval of the school nurse, Karen Kelly, number 10. And transfer number 12, Stephen Connors from the Bartle School to the middle school. 13, approval of Ms. Patel, paraprofessional. And number 14 are the Schedule B appointments. Number 15, the SEL planning sessions. Number 16 and 17 are professional development or mentoring. And then later on in the agenda items, we start in with the items that are funded by outside grants. So number 19, child studies funded by the IDEA basic grant, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 are similar, and then 25 are the translators, and number 26 is another professional development item.
Chris, thank you.
That's it.
Well, I wanted to make a very brief comment. 4 or 5 years ago, when my wife was the division chair of a college education department or division, the handwriting was on the wall that the state of New Jersey was making it more and more difficult for students to become teachers. Tests to enter programs, tests to exit programs, large expenses going with those tests, and making it virtually impossible, not only for the smaller private schools, but also for the large public universities. So this is a problem. It's getting worse. It's going to get much worse. And I think it's going to get harder and harder for us, as we've seen with the foreign languages, harder and harder for us to find teachers. But any comments or questions from the board? Rob?
Yeah, on Melanie leaving and us losing another choir instructor, it just seems like over the last few years, we've had a extremely hard time holding on to any of our music department staff, from people across the board. It just seems like it's a revolving door of people coming in and people going back out. And I wonder if it's time for us to really reassess exactly why that's happening and see if there's something that we need to do to make the music department either shorn up or put more effort there so that we can maintain some sort of integrity within that program so that we're not losing people. And that way we can have some consistency from year to year for those students who are focusing on music. And, when they move from the middle school to the high school, or there's that movement across from different schools, that there's that consistency in place and that we're not losing staff. I'm not quite sure why it seems to me that we're losing staff all the time, but I just feel like there's that maybe we're missing something and we need to look at what's going on and see what we can do there.
Rob, thank you. And I'm sure that Christina will take that under advisement. Thank you, though. Michelle, you have a hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of second, what Rob said. I think that's a really important thing for us to investigate. And I would like to add that we pay special attention to the idea that for over many years that, the years that Rob and I have been on the board for sure, we've had a different schedule every single year at the high school level for sure, which really affected music lessons and all types of different extracurriculars. But my guess is that, it has something to do with that. I'm sure that's not everything. It's been a tumultuous few years that's really understating it. But I would guess that, scheduling and finding time to actually teach these kids in a way that's consistent throughout, each year to year would have something to do with it. So I really appreciate Rob, asking us to look further into that. And I'm really excited to find out if there's anything we can do to prevent it.
Thank you, Michelle.
Dr. Nicosia, sorry to interrupt. Is there anything else we can share about why Ms. Chambers left? I didn't want to share too much because I wasn't sure how much was confidential, but would it be possible to say anything more?
All I know is that she is leaving New Jersey public education to seek a job in another state. For what that particular job path is, I'm not sure. So it's not necessarily a result of our program. So it's not like she's jumping ship to go to another public school in New Jersey. She's physically leaving the state. So you have to be a resident to work in New Jersey. So for our school district.
The last person we lost at the high school, I believe, retired after many years working in the district,
Yeah.
Mr. Coleman. So it is difficult, and it's difficult to find people. That's part of the problem.
It's completely possible that it has nothing to do with anything we're doing.
Right.
Absolutely. And I'm very, very sad to see Mel leave us. I think she's a wonderful, wonderful person and a really talented teacher.
Thank you, Michelle. Anyone else? Okay, well, on to policy then. Darcy isn't here, but I'm on the committee, and I would say that we have not met. We are planning to meet during this month, and I know that Darcy and Christina will be meeting to discuss a way forward, since we have gone through the vast majority of policies that need to be updated. This getting to the kind of bitter end, and it's one of those things that it's the closer you get to the end, the harder it becomes. But we're getting there, and as you get to the end, then the state has a new set of regulations, and you have to review a whole bunch of policies again. But we're getting there. So if there are no other board comments, I'd just like to remind everyone that I will come back to move for voting number 8 in finance, the approval of the contract with J&R Sound, but I want to give the public a chance to comment first and then move forward. So number 9, the Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Board policies 164 and 167 establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in public meetings. This is for the Zoom now. During this meeting, we ask that all members of the public mute themselves unless they are speaking during a public comment period. If necessary, we may mute you ourselves. You may leave your video on or off at your option. If we experience bandwidth problems and believe that limiting video could help, we may turn video off. If at the time of public comment you wish to speak, please raise your virtual hand in Zoom and wait for me to call on you. If you cannot raise your virtual hand, or if I miss your virtual hand, please turn on your video camera and raise your real hand. New Jersey law requires us to inform you that all commenters must behave appropriately in Highland Park. This means no screaming obscenities or inappropriate video displays. In the event of a speaker's inappropriate behavior, they will be muted. Okay, so I see Mr. Kovac's hand is up. Mr. Kovac, the floor is yours.
Okay, am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Get unmuted, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I just have one brief question. I would like to know what is going to be on the agenda for discussion at the Equity and Excellence Committee meeting.
Excuse me. I would like your address, please.
Oh, sure. 206 North 3rd Avenue in Highland Park.
Thank you.
So I just want to know again, what will be on the agenda to be discussed at the Equity and Excellence Committee meeting that is scheduled to be next week.
Just give me 1 second. So right now, agenda items include talking about the data surrounding AP and honors, in terms of students that are taking those courses. We are reviewing some of the updates from our advisor of diversity and inclusion, specifically looking at our AP and Honors Committee work. We will be looking at updates on our grade recovery program to support our students that received I's and P's. In addition, we have information from our National Honor Society. So we have some data that we're going to review
No.
from our National Honor Society.
Oh, well, Christina's responding.
Oh, there we go. And looking at some professional development on labeling students with disabilities.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. I don't, if you could just perhaps tell me who the advisor is that is mentioned, that's going to do updates.
So the advisor isn't going to be there. We're going to look at some of the information that she has sent. The board approved advisor that works on diversity of inclusion is Tara Young, guidance counselor at Bartle Elementary School.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Michelle, I'm gonna just hold your hand for 1 second. I want to see if anyone in the public wants to speak first. Rob Scott. And I always forget, please give us your address, Rob.
Yeah, I'm Rob Scott. I'm at 25 South 2nd Avenue. And I just wanted to offer a few comments that are a follow-up of email I sent to the board and to Dr. Nicosia. So I'll start with at the high school graduation, my son graduated and board chair Krieger gave a speech. It was like a really good speech.
Thank you, sir.
It got at this point, it vote and vaccinate, be part of a community, serve, you know, and that we're sort of all in this together. And on the way back in the car as we're coming home, my graduating senior said of the speech that it was based, which is very good, right? And
wait, what word did he use? Excuse me, I didn't hear you.
Based. So if I do something good, he'll be dad, that's based, okay?
I got it.
So this is good, right? Okay, it was not meant with the great kind of cynicism that you often get from teenagers, because they do put up with a lot of stuff that's absurd. And Dr. Nicosia sent out a very nice email encouraging everyone in the community to get vaccinated. And I really appreciate that. And I sense that there is probably no other thing that would make her job easier this next year as an incoming superintendent than if we had a really, really high vaccination rate. I have tried to figure out how many of our 12 to 17-year-olds are vaccinated because there is a report on the state dashboard, and we're up to 76% vaccinated amongst the 18 and over, and we're, I think, 60-something, 61 still in the all ages group, which kind of means it's a little unclear exactly what our demographics are, but we may be anywhere from 40 to 50, 55% vaccinated in the 12 to 17-year-old. And so what that means is if that's really true, and given the very good science that says that the Delta variant is much, much more transmissible, like 2 times or 3 times more transmissible, we can expect that there's a reasonable probability that if we have only a 50% vaccination rate in the high school and that we are open full time, that COVID will just sweep through the high school. Now, most high school kids are in better shape than older members of the community. And this is the reason I brought up Mark Krieger's speech, is that I just want to encourage the board and the superintendent to recognize that as policy is set for the next year, it's not just about the students and the safeties of the students, that the school district is part of the community as a whole. And the one place that our community at the local level can make the whole community safer so that we don't have transmission in the schools leading to transmission at home is if we have more vaccination. And more vaccination in the middle school and high school, because it will help the entire community, will also lower our case rates, which will make it a lot easier for the 12 and unders to have a more uninterrupted, positive school year. So what I wanted to say, and there just hasn't really been a lot of discussion about this, and I really think there needs to be, is I would like to see the board, the district, proceed with actually putting in place a policy that was firm about vaccination. And of course, the first obvious thing to do would be to require vaccination of all staff and teachers. I know many teachers are already vaccinated. I know many staff are already vaccinated, but it would be useful if the requirement was for all. And that requirement can, of course, obviously, there are some people who are not able to get vaccinated for medical reason. I don't think any of our staff are Amish, so I'm not sure if the religious exemption would apply, but that would be a first step. The next thing is it seems like a no-brainer that at some point down the pike, it's going to be a requirement to go to school to get a COVID vaccination. And I guess I would like to hear from the board some discussion of like, hey, why don't we do that this fall? Why don't we proceed with a policy that says every student who's eligible to get a vaccination, who's not exempted for a medical or religious reason, either needs to get vaccinated or they have to go and take a COVID test every week, something like that. I think this would make the school year better, safer, and the schools would be able to get around to the primary job, which is learning.
Rob, thank you very much. And we will discuss that at our, certainly at our August 23rd meeting. And we are discussing it now. Any other public members like to speak at this moment, at this time? Mr. Newtons, please unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Yes, hi, thank you for letting me speak here.
Oh, your address, please.
Oh, I live at 1711 Central Avenue, Highland Park. So I have a question. Throughout the pandemic, my kids actually did pretty well through school. We actually hired a tutor who they met with multiple times throughout the week. And I'm a little worried with so many kids that didn't do well. Has there been a plan set forth to meet all the kids' needs this upcoming year? As far as, I'm a little concerned that with so many people who have fallen behind, I've seen like with the lowering of the math standards in the middle school, I'm a little worried that they may try to slow down the learning process this year. Has that been discussed?
Christina, would you like to give a short answer on that one, please?
Sure, yes. So it's definitely been discussed and we have plans in place to make sure we meet the needs of all of our students in terms of curriculum and instruction, as well as social, emotional, and mental health. And all of that information will be put out at the August 23rd board meeting.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Newtons, for your question.
Thank you for addressing that for me. I appreciate that.
Anyone else like to speak? Michelle, seeing no other public person, please have the floor.
I just wanted to make sure that we pick up on one part of Mr. Newton's commentary, where we make sure that the public understands that we have not lowered the standards in the middle school math even a little bit. We have changed some things. We have discussed lots of others, but there has never been a plan to lower any standards. It's quite the contrary. So I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. And
Thank you,
that's
Michelle.
certainly true. The district has worked very, very hard to change the program to make it better and more applicable to more students. So we're very hopeful that the program is going to be stronger and better for the students. So seeing no other public speakers, Jason Postelnik, you have the floor. Give us your address, please.
Good evening. It's 606 Abbott Street, just very briefly, I just wanted to say that I second everything that Rob said. I think we know that the vaccines will save lives. So anything that we can do to increase those numbers, I think should be done, at least seriously considered. So essentially, I don't have to repeat anything that he said, but just wanted to support that notion. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to say just very briefly, like 1 or 2 sentences for both Rob Scott and Jason Postelnik and everyone else listening, that I believe the board supports a position of as much vaccination as possible, including if we're allowed to mandatory vaccination. And I won't say more than that, but I won't say more than that. I would want to do it in a second if we could, and if we can. In any event, any other speakers? Rob Magaziner, please.
Just a suggestion. I'm thinking about 12 to 17 and 18-year-olds and what might motivate them, if nothing else, to get vaccinated. I'm not talking about, caring about your neighbor, caring about your family, your friends, all of that. I think that possibly the thing that would motivate them the most would be to have a little less homework. And so I would suggest that we offer kids who decide to get themselves vaccinated in some way, offer them a day or 2 or 3 days off of homework in the first week of school. What do you think?
I like the idea. I would do more.
Okay.
But yeah, anything we can, like they're paying.
I think we should try to get creative. I think we should try to get creative and offer them things that are meaningful in their own lives.
Yes, I agree with you. And you were wanting to speak as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I mean, I am one of those people who would like to require vaccinations of staff and students as long as they're eligible religiously and medically. But my understanding is the holdup that we're discussing this with our attorneys, right? And whether that is something that we can do.
Yeah, we're in active discussion. We're in active discussion with the attorneys right now.
Correct.
So a lot of us, from an not ideological public health perspective, really do support that, but it's not clear we can do that and avoid an expensive lawsuit or 2 or worse. So that's what's going on with that.
Or be completely ignored.
Well, that too, but I mean, probably being completely ignored would, we probably still get more people if we required it. If a bunch of people ignored it, well, they're already ignoring it. You know what I mean? I think our concern is more going to have to be with liability. I don't know what our liability is, but that's why we have lawyers, hopefully.
Marilyn, you had a comment.
Just I like Rob's idea, and anything that we can do to get creative and get because while you're looking at the legal and whether we can or can't, it is within our control to, I don't know, maybe offer raffles, prizes, money, but I think homework is a great one. And there's probably leadership team would know what else students really might consider pushing them over the edge to get the vaccine. So I love that idea.
Okay, so seeing no more hands up, and I'm not trying to rush. If anyone wants to say anything, please raise your hand. But seeing no hands up, I do want to go back to the item number 8 of the Finance and Facilities report. And I do want to move that. So I'd like to move that the Board of Education approve the contract with J&R Sound and Communication for the purchase and installation of a sound system for the press box at the Highland Park High School Athletic Stadium at a total cost of $6,813.20. And then I don't understand the rest, but I won't read that in. It says Ed Data Clocks and PA's contract 8529. I guess this is a state contractor.
It's a cooperative contract.
Co-op contract.
Co-op bid.
Co-op bid. And so I'd like to move that. And do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And for those not here, because we had a member of the public write in and ask us a question, ask the superintendent a question about the facility, the football and athletic field and the track and all of that. And we are starting to move forward with that because this town got a grant and we've been putting money away. And we hope to do the refurbishing of all of that as quickly as possible. And bear with me, I'm used to 35 or 40 years of calling it a football field. It's an athletic field. So any comments from the board on this item 8? Linda, could we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Gowan,
Yes.
Mr. Krieger,
Yes.
Mr. Magaziner,
Yes.
Ms. McFadden Nicola,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Mr. Rizlovich,
Yes.
Mr. Woodward.
Yes.
Okay. So next on the agenda is the president's report. I only had one very brief thing, which I've made board members aware of, which is we're going to have 2 new liaisons, and they will be on the list at the next meeting. One of them is the mayor has asked me to appoint a member of the board to a subcommittee of the Wellness Committee, which is going to be involved with getting more people to vaccinate. And I've discussed that with Chris, and he's, I believe, very happy to do that. So he'll be meeting with various physicians that the mayor has lined up to try to get a program out there to get more vaccinations. And I was also approached by the chair or president of the Highland Park Athletic Boosters, and Kim, and she asked if that group could have a liaison the way the Highland Park Educational Foundation does. Suggested Rob Magaziner, and Rob is also very interested in doing that. So he'll be a liaison to that group. And I'm hoping both of those really will get us moving in a even better direction than we already are. So that's my report. Do we have any old business? Any new business? Okay, so now our second public comment. I'm just going to read the beginning. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Board policies 164 and 167 establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in public meetings. If anyone in the public wants to speak, please raise your hand. When I call on you, give us your name and your address, please. Okay, seeing no hands, I think it's time for an adjournment. So I move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
See you in 2 or 3 weeks, folks.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.